Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Worship Guitar Show. Pleasure to see you. Interesting topic for tonight. What's your problem, and how can I help?
Well, hello everyone,
Oh no no no
and
no no no
welcome
no
to
no
the
no! I already
Worship
muted
Guitar
you.
Show.
You
Pleasure to see
insufferable
you.
little
Interesting
so-and-so.
topic
No.
for.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Worship Guitar Show number 45. Interesting topic for this evening. What's your problem, and how can I help? So the interesting thing is we live in a world where everybody seems to have a problem with somebody or something, and it's always about proclaiming the problem. So I figured tonight would be about proclaiming some solutions, and the idea is to have you folks as transparently as you feel comfortable with within the framework of worship guitar and making music and having a career and a life in music. What that looks like, some of the areas that you're having challenges with, and I know a few things about music and the house of worship and the nuances of navigating walking your faith out as being a member of a team and the challenges of serving and being an obedient, servant of the house, but at the same time, the challenges of kind of walking that out sometimes. It's an interesting thing. And so there's lots of nuance to this. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking through, some of the obvious challenges. We had Bruce Adolph and I had a great conversation this morning with a guy that is going to be doing an interview with the magazine and is also going to be, hopefully going to be a regular contributor. I won't mention his name, but I will say he is a successful producer within the framework of worship. He's a successful touring guitarist within the framework of worship and has also had a successful career outside of that and is a great guy. We had a great conversation with him. And first of all, hello all. Alan, what do I mean by that? David, hello. Great to see you. Brad, what's not my problem? So, again, the thing is that so frequently, if we think about, if we're really honest, I mean, really brutally honest, kind of church life has a tendency to be, in a good sense, looking on the sunny side of the street and sometimes at the expense of kind of organizing things in a way that we actually don't actively look like, well, what's the problem? How do we fix this, right? Generally speaking, in my past life, I was a worship and creative arts director. And a big part of that role wasn't just kind of looking what was on the sunny side of the street. It's just kind of going, what are all the things that are going right? And what are all the things that are going wrong? And let's take the things that are going right and make them better. The things that are working, kind of leave them in place. If we can add some systems and things to make them even more fruitful, awesome. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because there's usually enough stuff to attend to that needs fixing. So, the idea is really to speak to kind of the range of that stuff so we can really... the great thing about every negative circumstance in church is that is with the right heart for all those involved is an amazing leadership opportunity, regardless of how much of a challenge it might be. And leadership opportunities always mean that you can, in theory, kind of walk arm in arm with somebody from divide, from, mistrust, from hurt into victory, right? Pointing upwards. And so that's one of the reasons I enjoy kind of taking the broom out and kind of going, okay, where are the areas that we need to sweep? The other thing about it is that in many ways that, let's say, for example, you own a house and you're like, hey, we just, painted the walls and now we're going to paint the walls in the other room, but you got termites down in the floorboards. You're ignoring some fundamentally significant things. And so the idea is if you can identify what the little things are that are eating away at the foundation of what's making you guys viable within your quote-unquote dwelling, that is to say the local church, then we can get somewhere with it. Okay. NTPL, what's going on? Great to see you. Michael Guy Chislett, I can't wait. I got plans for that guy, let me tell you. All right. Jeff, that is the kindest thing anybody said to me all day. And I've had a few kind things said to me, but I've got to put that in here. Hang on, am I able to grab that? No, I'm not. All right, so I gotta call Jeffrey Hatch out. Sounds like Lincoln Brewster. That's my kind of guy. Thank you. Lincoln is has become a friend. We love talking about gear and Marshalls and cabinets, and so we have bonded over and streaming and video. But he's somebody I love and dearly respect. In any case, so thank you. Those are kind words. I was actually listening to some Lincoln yesterday and again today. Heartfelt thanks. Shane, always a pleasure. All right, so here's the deal. So, traditionally, awesome, Houston, awesome. I hope things are better than they've been in past weeks. In any case, all right, so here's the deal. I'm encouraging you guys to ask questions, but knowing that, it may take a little bit of a nudge, I can talk about some of the common problems that we've got and some of the common solutions that we can try and do. First of all, I believe in a concept called leading upwards. That is to say, the great thing about being a servant is that when you have a servant's heart and kind of look upwards and think about how you can serve people, the coding, the Teflon that follows you when you bring suggestions, people know that it's coming from a place with a servant's heart. And it means that they're a lot more receptive to like, hey, here are some ideas. I think this could make things better, as opposed to like the heart attitude of like, well, these are all the things that you're doing wrong, and this is what we need to be doing to fix them. And there's a degree of diplomacy about this. This is the other thing about what has a tendency to separate successful leaders from leaders that leave a wake of people behind them, is that leading people through challenges is ultimately the most rewarding victory, because you're helping people again walk across and through something. And as you're addressing that in a leadership level, you're actually able to basically ask people to trust you, develop that trust, and through that trust, bring a group of people to some place that they couldn't have gotten without you. And that happens again both in the servant side and the leadership side. So the great thing about having that servant's heart is that, again, gives you that proximity to your leaders where they will actually know that you're wanting to help. Now, the other part of this, if we're going to be brutally honest, is the kind of like, let's turn the mirror towards ourselves and let's identify some of the ways that we get into our own way in the process of bringing these ideas forward. For me, I am a constant tap of ideas. And there was a worship leader that I served under when I first got saved that I drove her nuts. Great leader, really great heart. And the thing is that one of my gifts is that I can kind of come into a situation both on a spiritual level and on a heart level and on a musical level and kind of go, I can read the room, I can read the people, and I can read what's happening musically. I can read which worship leader / BV is listening to the click and which one isn't, because they're always out of time when you get to the slow part in the ballad where the drums drop out. Like, all this stuff I notice. And so with that in mind, it means that there's a constant flow of a huge amount of information that I could just be bringing back to my leaders going, well, what about this? And what about that? What about this? What about that? What about this? And the problem with that is they've got their own, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? The other thing is that quite often leaders are under attack. So they're dealing with their own stuff outside of church. All that is to say, try and figure out where it is in your own dynamics that you get in the way of actually having the messages that you want to have heard actually be heard and implemented when and where possible. With that said, let's get to the meat on the bone there. YouTube videos in the wrong key. I'll start there. How about that? There is this thing called multi-tracks, and it covers a multitude of keys. Oh, I like that. The other thing is I frequently humor myself, so bear with me. But the thing is that it is so easy now to provide people with the right key. Giving them the wrong key really is such a preclusion to getting things done. And you can also, you can pitch things inside PCO, Planning Center Online. I don't believe they've taken that feature out. So what it means is with a little bit of preparation, you make it really easy for people to be able to actually practice along in the actual key. So, all right, hang on a second. So let's take a look. Okay, good. Oh, hold on a second. I got to bring this one in. So, first of all, that was my first kind of drop off. So again, here's the thing. It is, so let's take off the, I'm going to go there. No, don't go there. Okay, Holy Spirit was like, no, don't. So here's the thing. There are certain ways that we need to, it's like you go to a winter formal. You're going to dress a certain way. Church, there's certain ways that you're going to behave and not behave. Misbehaving, you're not going to get the result that you're looking for. So the idea is that, this whole kind of YouTube thing is like, if we're really honest about it, it's a terrible way to prepare musicians to actually be able to do the job that they're volunteering their time to do. And it could really annoy you. So this, again, is kind of one of those things, is how we present this stuff. So on the stuff that's deep annoyance level, and this could be anything, generally speaking, never do it via text, never do it via email, when and where you can. And I suppose in these days, Zoom would work, but when Zoom is done, or maybe what you can do, I got a new idea. I love this. I don't have my cup, but have a virtual coffee meeting. So you agree, let's meet for coffee on Zoom at such and such a time. How you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Because when you meet for coffee, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you're going to get into whatever it's going to be gotten into about. So the point being is that's a great opportunity to go, look, I really want to do my best, but I really struggle getting the YouTube videos in a key that's not the key we actually play this thing. Here are some of the things that I know other churches are doing. Can we do some of these? And if not, can you tell me why? Because here's the other thing, is why tells us a lot. Because why means we actually want to know what the other person, where they're coming from, right? So that is strategically, and I'm sorry I've taken so long to get to this, but the point being is that it's nuanced, right? And that's life. It is nuanced. You identify the problem, then you kind of figure out, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? And then how do we go about that approach, right? And that is where, when it's about me, this is my problem. It's not you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing this, and it makes me feel bad and you. It's like, hey, you know what? I love to pray, to be overly prepared. I want to spend my time, but I have a challenge when I get a YouTube video and the song's in another key and I don't have the resources to play along with, blah, 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 blah. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why it opens the door for them to be able to go, hey, I've got a lot on my plate, I've got elder care, I've got kids, all the different things that people are dealing with, that quite often we have no idea until we ask, what? Why? All right. Okay. I'm going to put this up, Brad, because that is a lot of meat on that bone. I had an issue about 8 years ago being told, because I wasn't a professional musician, that I could no longer be on the volunteer. Be on the volunteer team. That stung for a long time. Yeah. So I'm going to pull all the meat off the bone there, because that would really suck. How's that for a word? Stink. All right. So I want to speak to kind of all the pieces of that. I guess I'm just going to have to leave it there. No, I get to move it now. Okay, good. All right, I get it. All right, so here's the thing. Not everybody is born a great leader. It's a learning process. That said, it is a good idea to kind of identify so we can talk about, again, what are the problems? If we don't pull them out into the light of day, we can't fix them. So one is every worship team, in my opinion, should have worship team guidelines. How you get on the team. And that means that if you're the son of the senior pastor or the daughter of the senior pastor, you don't get to bypass that process. Just saying. Number two, there's team conduct, that once you're on the team, there are expectations. And if you really want me to go there, I'm going to go there. One, you got to be in church. Two, you got to be in the Word. 3, you got to be in a community group. 4, you got to be tithing. And 5, you need to be at least as interested in your spiritual development as you are in your musical pedalboard development. Now, I said need to, I actually said have to. You got to be a little gentle around that. But the idea is like rules are rules. And it's not a matter of laying down the law for people. These are things that are good for the team and they're good for the individuals. Because ultimately, a worship team, in my opinion, there is this thing that happens on Sunday, quote unquote, that is honestly the least important thing that we do. Worship teams are a leadership and development vehicle for creatives. It's the one place that we can kind of hang out together, because most of us would be creating in our music rooms on our own or in some rock band that gets together once or twice a week, right? So this is an opportunity for us to grow. And so in so doing, it's like a micro church within a church. It's like a small community group inside a church. And with that in mind, you really want to be caring for those people. And that means that you don't want somebody to be able to come in who got a free pass because, again, they were related to the pastor. That's just not fair. Because, first of all, that breeds that sense of like, oh, there's different rules for the special people. I guess I ain't one of the special people. You don't want to head down that road. And then, the other part of it is that when it's a fair process and somebody doesn't get in, you actually have a process to on-ramp them and, and an actual audition process. And you go, okay, look, we have this thing where, and mind you, at a certain point, you do actually need to set these in place. But, it's like when I stepped into the role of being a worship and creative arts director, I was like, okay, we need some structure here because it's been loosey-goosey. And I will actually be totally honest without calling anybody out directly. There was a period of time before then where one of the leaders had decided basically anybody who wanted to sing could come sing on the worship team. And it was a disaster. And there was this one girl who I loved, adored, but she should never have been anywhere near a microphone. And I'm not really in favor of just kind of coming into a role and kind of going, you, out of here. Kind of like what you're talking about. So what I did was like, okay, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to lock arms spiritually, not physically, with this person and walk with them. So I was like, you know what? We're going to meet and we're going to work on your voice. And until your voice is at a certain place where your pitch is actually in tune, we're only going to have you sing with the choir, because we put together this little choir, because I was like, how do I not just throw these people off the team? I'll start a choir. Because in a choir, it's like 4 people in tune, 1 person out of tune, you got a chorus, right? And this was an absolutely lovely woman. Her counterpart was also a member of the worship team, which meant that there was all this other subtext that was really going to get messy. So, Brad, to your point, you actually, when you come into a season where it's a season of change, you want to be very careful about not changing the rules, mid-game, right? So, and the other part of it is that, voluntold, well, you want to give people the sense that they've got some buy-in. So the idea of kind of leading through that season, I learned a lot about, like, what is it going to cost me to try and take that person to the other side? And it cost me time. It cost me a lot of energy. But the buy-in that I got from the people on that team was, one of my best buddies said, I'd take a bullet for you. And he meant it. And when you have that type of relationship, that walks onto the platform with you. And what people see is not what's on the platform. They see the unity that happens off the platform. And that is extremely powerful. And ultimately, that manifests itself when the presence of God actually falls on that, because God's like, unity, I'm in. Division, you guys need to figure a thing or two out. Like, God is there, but it's just kind of like, grow up. The Bible is all about it. Read some Proverbs. Just like, and I'm not, and again, my heart is to really do everything I can to prosper people. But at a certain point, there are times, my dad used to say to me when he would put me over his knee, this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. And he had this little wood thing that he would hit me with. It wasn't, like abuse. And it hurt. But honestly, I reflected on this over the past year, and I actually really believe that when he said that, he meant it. Our Father mourns, and it hurts him when he sees us in discord. Really bothers him. All right. So, Brad, not knowing any more of the subtext there, that sort of stuff really hurts. And I feel for you. This is the thing, is the empathy thing. We live in a very unempathetic world, except for people who have a tendency to agree with what we agree with. And if not, it's like, blah, 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 them, right? To really lead people well, you have to understand who they are. You have to invest the time, and you have to want to invest the time. And then what you get, again, is buy-in. Now, here's the thing. As a leader, you have a job to do, which is kind of like they brought you into a position to achieve certain things on a Sunday. But the other thing is that, in a church environment, a leadership role has a number of layers in it, some of which are spoken, some of which are unspoken. And each church has its own culture. But there is the culture of God and the culture of worship, which is raising up those around you, helping those who can, need some sort of assistance in the framework of that relationship, and going, I'm here to help, right? Okay. Okay. Serious question here. All right. Brad, I hope that was a help. I feel for you. Alan, hey. Okay, serious question here. Our MD is the pianist, incredible player, incredible teacher. No swing. How do I help her feel the swing in syncopated parts with grace and humility? That is a great question. I love that. So, first of all, let's talk about the church sandwich, right? It's kind of like when my wife's cooking tonight's dinner. Even before I actually know what it is with my eyes, I'm like, oh, she's making Kung Pao. You can smell it a mile away. Okay, so the church sandwich, it's like, oh, I love blah, 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 blah. And they're like, why don't you just say whatever it is you're going to say? So it's just like, hey, can we meet for a virtual coffee? And just go, look, first of all, I love serving underneath you, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And, these are the things that you excel at so many different things, and you're a brilliant musician and pianist. I want to talk about something that's a little uncomfortable for me. Again, it's about me to talk about, but it's a musical thing, and it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but here's the thing. It's for the benefit of making the music better and kind of talking through some of this stuff. And kind of going, it's just like, I want to talk about kind of, if you will, kind of the swing in your groove. And, how much time have you spent on that? Because of all the things you do amazingly well, and I love you to death. That's one that, I don't know, I feel that we could maybe do better. And I don't quite know how to say it, but I'm going to say it the best as I can and say it in love. Can we talk about it? And the other part is go, hey, do I have your permission to bring up something that's a little uncomfortable, but I want to have the conversation and understand a little bit better. And so the reality is, let's hit the pause button there. The reality is, most piano players that end up getting dragged into playing on a worship team started off with glasses and an acoustic piano going da 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 da, and they learned to read music. And the concept of walking in and looking at a chart that didn't have the notes peppered all over it is terrifying. The concept of a synthesizer is terrifying. The concept of some sort of computer-based plug-in soft synth, terrifying, because it's totally outside of their comfort zone. One of the other things, unless you've grown up. That is very different than and until you've actually fallen in love with that music, and until you've actually played. don't know how to feel that in the time, and it's fine. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to do 7 to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. If you've never played 7 and 6, I'm like, hey, let's do some 7 and 6. And you're like, you are out of your mind. So you just got to kind of walk people through it. And the other thing is that there's also the art of kind of showing somebody that is, leading up, where you kind of go, okay, look, swing is it. Can we talk about swing? Are you cool and kind of, honestly, the thing I would love it if you could maybe have some more swing in your playing. I love everything you do, but this is kind of one thing that I think could take what you do and make it even more awesome, and do it in a way that doesn't feel like you're like, yo, to make you so awesome, whether it's about you as opposed to about them. If you make it about you, but also about them, you build a bridge. So the thing is that the reality is basically swing in the most basic sense is taking eighth note triplets, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, and removing the eighth note triplet that's in the middle, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. All right, then the other thing is there's eighth notes. And eighth note, swung eighth notes. And then there's where you're taking that regular eighth note as opposed to 1 and 2 and where you're adding a little bit of swing to that second eighth note. That is a 1 and, the and of 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. What you're doing is you're taking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and taking that and making it 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, and taking that and pulling it towards where that 3 is. That's basically swinging that second eighth note. And, that is it's a musical phenomenon. It's explainable. It's tangible. And you can literally sit there in an application like Pro Tools and actually create some sort of drum thing where you're actually taking that eighth note and gradually dragging it to that place. So one of the things you could actually do, if you wanted to train somebody on how to do that, is actually create set gradations. Here's straight eighth notes. Here's eighth note triplet. Swung eighth notes where it's 1, 3, 2, 3, and then maybe even just took one that was right smack in the middle. So you're kind of like, here is kind of the middle ground. You're like, oh, that's really cool. Because most study musicians, and that sounds like, if they're an MD, they know what they're doing. And incredible player, incredible teacher. So that just means like, it's another thing for them to learn. They're like, I've always, and this is the great thing about real musicians, they'll always be like, I always wanted to learn how to do that. Cool. And this is, the book of Doug is like, for me, it was like, okay, well, let's get together on a Saturday. And I had a drummer, couldn't play with the click. Somehow, in the season of wandering in the desert, he was invited onto the team. Couldn't play to a click, save his life. So basically, every time he was rostered, it was a nightmare. I loved this guy. So I was like, you know what? I'll build a bridge. Let's join arms. And I basically would meet with him for 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday, a couple times a month. And eventually, with a little bit of sweat of the brow, we got him to the point where he could play with a click. I mean, he is a drummer. It's not like the idea of playing in time is completely foreign. And he actually was a really good drummer. It's just like his tempo wavered all over the place. But once we got him dialed, the great thing is he was so appreciative of the fact that I was like, what do I need to do? Because that sort of, I'm going to lay myself down for you, is a familiar concept in this biblical thing, right? And that's really, we talk about, the idea of leading up, but the idea of serving down. Ooh, I like that. Because ultimately that means that the people that we're charged to lead really sense that our heart is to not lead them, but to serve them. And there is a discernible difference between those two attitudes. Just saying. Great question. Thank you for bringing that. Great question. I see a comment here about my chorus. Hang on. There we go. The chorus effect. All right. Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah. The gone in it's like gone in 6 months is the equivalent of gone in 60 seconds. I'm sorry though. That's sort of stuff like honestly, that sort of stuff. It breaks God's heart, and it breaks my heart because the thing is that more than kind of like you need to be on this team because of this or you're not and you aren't and you can't and you shouldn't. It's this opportunity to pour into people. It's not about what happens on Sunday. That is a byproduct of what's really happening behind the scenes. That's why Hillsong has had the impact that they have. I've known those folks. I've known them since I got saved. Some of them before I got saved. And my wife is a Hillsong girl. That's where she sang as a BV with Darlene. She sang on some of those records. Like she's a real deal. And I got a chance to kind of watch some of their team meetings before rehearsal, and just like I've had a chance to see the real Hillsong behind the scenes, and it's legit. And the reason God has used them the way that He's used them is what's really happening. The DNA of who they are, the DNA of the Joel Houstons, the DNA of the Michael Guy Chislets, one of my guitar heroes, the Droffs, legit. And, like multiple generations. You want to talk about, there's generational curses and there's generational inheritance. I mean, the fact that, United is no longer the youth generation, that church, I got to tell you. Yeah. All right. Eric, hey, thank you. Serving downright. I mean, honestly, I know where my inspiration comes from. Oh, look at this. And thank you, by the way. The Gemster, my favorite. How are you, my friend? What's this topic about? Gemster. So this topic is about like, hey, look, in church, we frequently don't get a chance to go, I kind of am having a problem with this, and I don't know what to do about it. That's what it is. Now, you probably asked that 20 minutes ago, but there you have it. Alan, thank you. What a pleasure. What's your problem, Jim? All right, let me check in on the Book of Face here real quick, because unfortunately, with RTSP, those don't have a tendency to come through. All right, look at all this good stuff. All right. First of all, hello, Jeffrey. Oh, there we go. We already caught that. Good. Paul, what's going on? Coffee makes everything better. How you doing, Paul? Did I reply to your message? If not, I am now. In any case, yes, it does. Thanks, Mel. There we go. The wife there. Guidelines set culture as well as establish boundaries. Love that. We live in a time where people seem to feel free to cross each other's boundaries without any thought. Miguel, how are you? Great to see you, my friend. Always a privilege. That was, oh, there we go. Melissa talking about the BV conversation. That was a hard conversation, but she so appreciated the honesty and the commitment to develop her ability. That was, first of all, let's be really, really clear. That had very little to do with her. It had everything to do with me. That was God's like, well, you wanted this. What are you willing to do for it? Wasn't like, and, I didn't step into that role going, I've arrived. But the thing is, I really, I saw a tremendous need. But ultimately, what God really did was He used that opportunity to grow me. It helped her tremendously because she saw the care and the consideration. And again, it's kind of, this is one of the things that we've all had bad experiences at church, pretty much. When we have amazing experiences at church, we know the difference and we kind of go, that's why I'm in, right? And you don't have that many opportunities to demonstrate that for people. So when you do, it's kind of like, the Grand Slam. It's like, the 100-yard pass, whatever the heck it is. Those are the moments that we win in. Lonnie, hey, I'm going to read. It's to Brad. Hang on, where is Brad? I'm not seeing Brad's comment here, but I'm going to read Lonnie's comment here because it looks interesting. To Brad, I've been in worship over 40 years. Well done, good and faithful servant. Paid a good salary. Many years ago, I was serving on a mission several years, and I wanted to do a song at a church I was attending. They went out of their way, even took me to lunch just to tell me, no, don't worry about it. Blessings. Oh, okay, yeah. Here's the thing is that, you know, it brings up a story that is close enough to home that I probably can't go there, but I can give you another version of it. First of all, there's a duality to this stuff. First of all, when you're told, like, hey, it's been nice having you around. Appreciate all the, the showing up at 6 a.m. and loading in and all of that. But because you're not a professional musician, you can't be on the volunteer team anymore. It's like, thank you, but take a hike. It's like, crap, poop, stanky. But the interesting thing is that kind of Lonnie, what you're talking about there is, again, when you take that moment to have a sidebar with somebody, then you're giving the opportunity to actually kind of do a sidebar. That's an investment in relationship. Like, honestly, the other thing is sometimes saying no to people is actually helping them. It's leading them. It's I've got a little black doggy. He decided the other night that my steak should be his steak. And we needed to let him know that the steak that had been on the counter that he pulled down onto the floor was not the sort of behavior that was going to be acceptable. And it was actually not going to be good for him to repeat that behavior. And we did need to apply a little doggy conditioning. And guess what? You know what? It's good for the dog to understand that he is the dog and we are the masters. Just in the same way, obedience, it's good, right? We're supposed to stay on the path. And if God doesn't every so often give you a little swat, that is to say, there are times that, if a church doesn't want to do a song for a particular reason or whatever it is, sometimes we just have to go, I'll honor that, right? I think Brad's conversation is a different one, which is just like, thanks, but, we no longer need your services. There is nuance to all of that. Jim, how you doing, my friend? Nashville in the house. Rick Costa, always a pleasure. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to catch up with Melissa here. She's so awesome. There you go. I'll take Rick's comment here. Mark Knopfler, who's one of my favorite guitar players. By the way, there's a song called Planet of New Orleans that's, if you want to hear Mark Knopfler in a vibe with an amazing track, that would be it. All right. Once said, he is always learning. That's the attitude that I always have and will always have. No, that's the whole thing. It's like, it's... If you don't have a hunger for more, you just kind of stagnate. Yuck. All right. That Fender sounds so sweet. Oh, thanks. I love this cute little guitar. It's not super expensive. But I'm playing it in and it's sounding better and better and better. All right, Friedman Morgan, what's going on? I love what you do from the Philippines. Well, I love you too. So thank you. Really appreciate it and much appreciated. Awesome, 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 awesome. Deanne, what's going on? How are you? Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Awesome, awesome, awesome. That's funny. Okay. All right. Thanks, Rick. All right, let's see. It's jumping here. All right. Oh, hang on. All right. Why is this jumping like this? All right, let's see here. All right. So Shane, no problems right now, but we're having an all hands worship team meeting Sunday night. So I may have an addendum next week. Yeah, this is okay. You know what? I'm going to take that lead really well. So one thing is leading through change. The other thing is following through change, right? So, and here's the thing is like, ultimately there are the valley seasons and there are the mountaintop seasons, right? And the valley seasons are quite often where you can't see the mountaintop for the trees, maybe is a good way of saying it. And you're just kind of like, holy cow, is this what it's about? because sometimes it can feel like that. But ultimately, those are the seasons, and God has shown this to me over and over and over and over and over again, is those are the seasons where God is preparing me to be ready for those peak experiences. Because the interesting thing is when you climb up to the mountaintop, first of all, there's a journey involved in that. You have to be ready for that journey. Pat Barrett told me this amazing story. And it was just like, by the way, Pat Barrett, he's awesome and he runs deep. So he said he's got a buddy that has had this fruit tree. And, and Pat, and it's an analogy of fruit and whatnot, but Pat, I think, is a bit of a gardener. And before I used to work every day too much, I used to spend a lot of time in the garden with Melissa doing stuff. Hopefully at some point I will find the incentive to actually put the work down and get out to one of my loves, which is the garden, with my love. The point being is that he was saying, he had this friend that had this fruit tree, and like in the first spring, buds, fruit, all this stuff, and he was like, just not fair. And the first storm came, and those big pieces of fruit, that little sapling of a tree, couldn't handle it. All the branches got ripped off in the storm. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. I was like, that's a story. I'm like, and he was just like, if you're not ready for the fruit, it's going to rip some branches off and it's going to hurt. And I was like, wow. Or, that's me kind of digesting what he said, but I was just like, man, I'm like, I gotta hang out with this guy more. It was an interview we did, right? But it was such a great story. I was just like, because you want that little sapling that's fruiting, and you're like, oh, this is great. And all of a sudden you go like, wow, all of a sudden come out one morning after a storm and all the fruit's on the ground, the branches have been stripped off, and there it is, right? Careful what you wish for, because sometimes the cost after you've attained it, you may not actually be able to handle that cost. That's why those valley seasons and preparing you as you climb up that mountain or climb up hills and then come back down to the valley, such that when you actually get to the real mountains, you're ready for that quote unquote peak experience, right? And it's a thing, it's a journey, right? And the other side of it is that when the peak experience is ended and you're going to walk down into the next season, but it's all about seasons of preparation. This is where again the leadership factor is. If you think you've got a team of let's just say 10 people, and if you think everybody on that team is just doing great, nobody's struggling with porn, nobody's fooling around with their whoever, nobody is getting high, nobody is having domestic violence issues, nobody is, and those are all the things that I know that have happened on worship teams that I've served on, right? Nobody is smuggling things out of the country, and I'm not talking about drugs. I mean, like literally just criminal activity, it's just like, it all goes on, people struggle, so the point being is like, you got to be ready for it. All right, hang on a second. Okay, here. Friedman, hey, I have not checked out the MG300. However, I am going to make a note for myself, and I'm going to text that to myself, and I will do a little observation. All right. Oh, Steve, look at you. The player makes the sound. You're too kind. Just saying. Here's the thing: is that the great thing about the player, and it's like this combination, this conversation that was over on YouTube. There, hang on a second. Who was that? Who was it that was having? Oh, Jem, look at all that good stuff. Ooh, I can't wait to dig in with you, my friend. Ooh, that's going to be good. It was Alan, right? So, the idea is that the real student, to be a great player, there are three things. And this was part of the conversation we had with this guy today. And he was talking about, he was really passionate to share what he did because he came from a place where there was no opportunity and he had to leave and he had to come to New York and basically make it in New York, and then he went to Miami, had to make it in Miami, but making it in Miami was like kind of like you were just going to be on this path forever, and there was no ascent. He was just going to keep doing the same thing until he died. He was like, I got to move to Nashville, kind of knowing nobody, and just kind of went, I'm in, and trusting God for that. But he wants to share the path of that journey, and he's a serious player, serious producer. Plays with a very famous Latin worship leader, and is the MD now. Serious cat. But the point being is that that hunger to not stay where you are is ultimately what allows musicians to grow. So 1/3 talent, got to have some talent. 1/3 knowledge, because you got to kind of know, and 1/3 practice. That, if you will, trinity yields great results. And here's the deal: 1/3 of that is the talent. So the other two are hugely important. Now, there are the John Mayers of the world who have so much talent that it's kind of grossly unfair. But that's why, there are John Mayers, because they inspire us to kind of go, okay, well, I don't have John Mayer talent, but if I study, I'm going to not point this finger at you, and I work, and then that is to say, I improve my knowledge, and then I practice, that's the incentive. God's got a plan about all of this. All right. Let me see. All right. All right. I can't pull this in. Deanne, we have had, and then Jem, I'm going to be with you in just a moment. We've had 3 services that has lots of problems, but we have also been fasting as a church. Love that. Like, again, you want to talk about building unity. It's like, we're going to fast together. That's like, come on, Satan, step up. We're fasting together. Love that. And I think someone is trying to stop us from moving forward. Yeah, guess who? We are a strong team, so we soldier on. Amen to that. Would love if you guys could do some stuff in Australia sometime. We would love to as well. And we've got a couple of things that we're working on that are going to be online that are going to be really, really, really cool. Awesome. And I love that. Awesome, 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 awesome. Gem. Okay, all right. Oh, boy, I love this. The Apostle Gem. Well, here's my latest problem. I've got 2. One, I'm wondering, praying if it's time for me to move on from young adults ministry, even if I'm currently 23, and it's until you're 25. That's a great question. So, and I'm not getting a word on it, so I'm just gonna kind of roll with that. One is obviously you want to pray about it. 2, I'm going to take Deanne's lead. Maybe you just need to fast about it, right? Maybe you just need to kind of go, okay, I'm going to fast until I get the answer. Because what's great about that is just kind of like, all right, God, I really need to hear from you, and I do actually like to eat, but you know what? I'm actually going to push into you, and I'm looking for your wisdom on this, because Jem, you have a when we were talking about the extra portion of talent, you've definitely got that. That was evident from the first time I heard you play. So the point being is that, the other thing about seasons is that we also don't want to rush what God is wanting to do in us in a particular season, right? That is to say that next 2 years, you might learn something about leadership in in that group, the young adults, that you wouldn't have learned kind of, sprouting wings and going, into that next phase of development, becoming a butterfly, maybe while you still need to spend a little bit of time as a cute little caterpillar. The other thing is you have the opportunity to be a caterpillar in lots of different places and become a butterfly without having the kind of like, well, there are rules, not for the sake of rules, but for the sake of emotional and spiritual and maturity, not musical maturity, right? So That is to say, is if you knew Proverbs front to back and were leading 5 community groups and were preaching a couple times a month, and on a spiritual level, and I'm not saying that you're not, and honestly, I haven't checked in with you well enough to know, but if on a spiritual level, you were rivaling what you do on a musical level, then that's a different conversation. The other thing that I would strongly suggest doing is I would suggest going to your pastor and just going, hey, I'm trying to work this through. Now, here's the thing is that, explain the reasons, again, do a virtual coffee date, and, they will probably have some very wise counsel for you. I know that the time that I spent, under the tutelage of Joe Satriani, he was very purposeful about how he taught me. He was nothing was an accident. It wasn't like, some guitar lesson I just kind of came in there and he was just like, all right, A blues Doppler, great, thanks, give me your money, out of here. Like every lesson was a lesson. He was preparing me, Padman, he was, wax on, wax off, it was always that thing. He was discipling me and he saw the potential, but he also, when he needed to give me a whooping, he didn't hesitate to do that. And sometimes, it was just kind of like, first of all, he never, said, oh, you're not ready for this. He was always trying to egg me on. So let me be really clear that, my heart here is to kind of go, hey, if the path is to move forward earlier, then that's the path. But if God is just like, there's stuff you've got to learn here and spiritually that, growing, it's like skipping a couple of grades, that may not ultimately serve your journey. And it may not actually prepare you, for the ministry side of what music is going to enable you to do. Just a thought. Now there's more. Okay. I love it. Wondering, praying. I love it. That's great too. There we go. Oh, even more. I just got offered literally 5 days ago a brand new position at my church that has never happened before. I got offered to work part-time as music director role, continued, awesome, for a small church and people who've been there for so long with systems built in that place that have been there for a while. I'm wondering if I take this role, how can I help the music side move forward and progress, whether it's music, training, tech, etc. And I've never even thought about working at a church before. Okay. Wow, that's a lot to digest. So hopefully you caught, which I think you did, enough of kind of the backstory of kind of serving in basically that same type of role at the church that I used to be the worship and creative arts director. That prepared me. The interesting thing is that we recently had a team meeting with WM people, and Bruce, the publisher of Worship Musician, though he doesn't like me to call him my boss, if you were to go, what's his role to you? He is the magazine publisher, but he is my boss. And the neat thing is that I learned things in that role there about how to lead a team that I don't think Bruce had ever seen. So we had this team meeting and kind of got everybody there. And, so part of my job was to introduce all the people to one another because not everybody knew one another. And it was interesting as I did, I was like, I said, this person, and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and they do this and this and this. And by the time I kind of went through everybody, I'm like, it was a reminder to me that I had learned to invest the time in people to know about them. And I really kind of left that Zoom meeting kind of going, it was really cool. It was also cool to know that, Bruce kind of commented to me afterwards, that was good leadership. The outgrowth of that was doing some things. And he, because Bruce and I usually work one-on-one or maybe with Matt, who does all the design stuff, he'd never seen me in that type of a role because that's just not how we normally function. And so it was really, it was affirming for me to kind of go, oh, that was cool. I don't do that often, but that gift, once you learn it, it's the equivalent of being an MD. And, the guy that I was talking about earlier, he kind of went from being, his journey's not dissimilar to yours, and that there is obviously a bit of worship music happening in Australia, and there is obviously a bit of music that's been huge in Australia, like AC/DC and so on and so forth. Cold Chisel, Men at Work, to totally date myself, right? But the point being is that there are things that you learn in those roles, and there are things that you learn as an MD. Honestly, Jem, the fact that you went out and played bass on that tour means that you're in a position where, as an MD, first of all, you get paid better. There is more responsibility, but guess what? You become a lot more important. Guitar players are a dime a dozen. And right now, there are a lot of guitar players that would be very happy to take a touring gig once that opens up. It's going to be really interesting to see how competitive people are when they have the opportunity to go out and tour again. So the point being is the skills you learn in those roles are ultimately preparing you for things that you have no idea are coming. I didn't know that call was going to be something that role at that church really prepared me for. But there are things that I did in that role that I knew in that time. I'm like, this has legs for things that to come, and I don't necessarily know what they are. For example, one of the things, and this is a great vehicle for worship teams in general. I think I've talked about it here a couple of times, but one of the first things I did was like, okay, well, we got to work on our time. And so what we did was we did these rhythm exercises. I got everybody around, and that's, by the way, one of the things, just for the sake of conversation, especially for anybody that's here in leadership, pizza is my favorite food because it's served in the round. You get people there, and everybody can have a piece. Not necessarily the healthiest food, but it's hard to turn down a good slice of pizza unless you're like, I don't know, vegan or something. And I think they even have vegan pizza. Not that I've had it. The point being is that those get-togethers to build, a community, having people to the house, just to hang without our instruments is big. But the other thing is team nights where you get together and you do things like work on rhythm. So, and that's where getting people together in a circle. One of the things that we did was actually really cool, and I heard about it somewhere, and I was like, oh, I'm totally ripping that off. It's got everybody in a circle. It's like, all right, tell us something embarrassing that nobody here knows. And, so literally, like, one of the guys was like, oh, man, I was going to college, and, I was getting ready to go to class, and I had an accident in my pants, and I had to go buy new pants and underwear on the way to work. One of the girls was like, I had to go to the bathroom on somebody's lawn. I was on my way somewhere, and I just had to go. I mean, I realized I've gotten a little bit down in the I don't know, whatever the heck it is, the human side of life. But the funny thing is that by the time people kind of let that oh, I'm perfect, I have no flaws, I don't pass gas, I've never yelled at anybody, I've never flipped anybody off on the freeway, I've never said a swear word as opposed to like, yeah, this happened, and blah blah blah. And once everybody in the room does that, it's a really powerful experience because you know each other. You know each other not because you did this other thing where like we're going to meet over coffee or we're going to meet on Saturday, but you know each other because you set up an environment where people could let their walls down. That was a really special opportunity. It was a very special time for me. And I've never served on a worship team that had that much stuff. And then some people came in from the outside, and it was over. Yeah. What a mess. And I got totally burned. But, God, it was kind of like an Egypt moment. It's like, all right, well, because I wouldn't have moved on otherwise. And he's like, I got other things for you to do, and it's going to hurt, but you got to go. So in any case, Jem, you're going to learn a lot of really valuable things in that role. So when and where possible, be mindful of kind of going, what am I growing in here? What am I weak in that God is using this opportunity to expand my capacity in? What are the things that I do well out of the gate instinctively? And what are the things that I'm going to have to find somebody to teach me how to get better at, right? Who's going to be able to disciple me through the areas that I'm going to run into that I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I think you're in a good sense of the word, a confident young man, and I also think you have an excellent work ethic. But we all come up against stuff. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Like, I don't know. If I were you, I'd be thinking like, I don't know how I'm going to, kind of get out of Australia and end up back in Nashville making a living playing guitar if that's something that you aspire to do. Which, if I were you, I could see aspiring to do that. Those are the sorts of questions that, would keep me up at night. And my guess is that those are the sorts of questions that keep you up at night. And the great thing is that God, prepares us where we are to move to where he needs us to be when he's ready to send us there, right? But sometimes, to quote Tom Petty, the waiting is the hardest part. Keep me posted, my dear friend. Hello, Sahara. How you doing? I want to Helix Native Live. What do you think is okay to use it? That's a great question. Okay. I would, rather than using Helix Native, I would consider either using the Helix itself, the big one, or they've just announced, the video came out today and it was leaked before, HX Stomp XL, which is like the smaller HX Stomp. It does not have as much processing power as the big Helix, but that big Helix, I've hauled that thing across an airport. I'm like, that thing's heavy. I've got a big giant backpack for it. I'm like, HX Stomp XL is about yay big, and I think it's exceedingly cool. What's neat about it is you don't need a computer to use it. So here's the thing: is that you opened up a great topic. I'm seeing Jem's comment about the Pat Barrett story. Ouch. How do you think the guy who had that great tree and all of a sudden came out, the branches were ripped off? That's a lesson. Careful what you wish for, Jem. Again, Jem, there you go. If you're looking for that kind of the affirmation and the confirmation, there you go. What happens when the tree's not ready? And I'm not speaking that over you. I'm just saying. It's kind of woohoo. All right, so the whole thing about this computer-based thing, because Helix Native, you need to use a computer to use it. The thing about your average computer when using a DAW-based plugin is that there's going to be some sort of latency, which means that when you hit the strings and then when it processes that signal, there's going to be a lag. Now, on a bigger topic, the concept of using the equivalent of main stage for keyboardists, which basically they're using a controller, and then the computer main stage is loading all these different synth sounds. The equivalent is happening in an application called Gig Performer for electric guitar. And basically it enables you to, in a live situation with some sort of audio interface, use all your favorite plugins from your DAW and get studio quality live. I mean, it is unreal. But I went to load Helix Native in it, and I couldn't get it to load. So I've actually got to reach back out to my friends at Line 6, because I'm very friendly with them. So the downside with using Helix Native is you need to use it within the framework of a DAW. And to the very best of my knowledge, and I should know this, but I'm 99.9% positive, and I actually need to suggest this as well. One of the things that's really cool about the Neural DSP plugins is you can use them as a standalone plugin. So, hate to do this, but I'm going to go there. Presuming I'm correct about Helix Native, you actually need to load it in the framework of your DAW. Neural DSP has a Corey Wong plugin. I'm sure you've heard of Corey, and if you haven't, now you have. Amazing guitar player. So the whole thing is that believer, but known for playing in Wolfpack, and also has his own thing, and is just a brilliant rhythm player. But he's got a Neural DSP plugin. I think it's called the Corey Wong plugin. They have this word that precedes the artist's name. In any case, you might want to try that. And what's great about it is you can run it on a computer. You're going to need some sort of audio interface to get into it, but you don't need to be running on a digital audio workstation like Pro Tools or whatever that you load the plugin in. And what's neat about the Neural DSP stuff is they sound great. And these are the same folks that did this new box that everybody is having conniptions about called the Quad Cortex. All the rage right now. All right, so the point being is the idea, though, of going, I'm going to use plugins in a live setting is coming. And I think Universal Audio tried to go there-ish in these new little pedals that they released about a month ago that really kind of, they had a brilliant opportunity to step into that thing, and I think it was not well received. I think they picked the wrong person for the demo. The player played really well, but it was the wrong player. It was a once, it's like flowers. They're only fresh once, and it was just that opportunity for them to own the moment. And people were looking, and they were just kind of like, meh. So the point being, though, is this concept of studio plugins in pedals that have little microcomputers running, something like that, as opposed to like I have my computer or I have my my tablet. We're headed there. So you actually are very much on the right track. The real question is kind of what are the best solutions today? So check out the Corey Wong plugin. Go to neuraldsp.com. It's a free download for like a 10-day trial. And check it out because that will work without having to use it as an instantiated plugin inside your DAW. And then let me know next week how it went. I love that. And needless to say, when you see me kind of get like this, it's like it's in one of my favorite areas, which is kind of this edge of technology and where technology is going. Because I have the privilege of working with a number of manufacturers and have access to gear quite often before it comes out. So I'm always interested in where things are going, and I'm equally interested in where people who are going to be going, hey, I want to use Helix Native Live. And I'm like, that thought process is where this whole thing is going. Love that. Hope that was a help. Valley season. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, all right, so hang on. I pulled this one up, so hang on a second. What about the Red Scholl church experience? Got kicked out for drinking when they never told him the rules. I was wondering if leadership would have led him to Christ or a cup of coffee talk. Thoughts? All right, that's a great question. So, there's this thing called the Old Testament. Perhaps you've heard of it, right? It's about the law, it's about the law, it's about the law. And there is, this kind of the Ten Commandments. There's some good meat on those bones, right? Thou shalt not kill is probably a good one. Coveting, all of that stuff. Because one, the Israelites were, kind of an unruly bunch. They were up to no good, and they had yet to receive the Savior's grace, right? So within grace, I mean, I actually hadn't heard this story. I know that Rhett did, some for hire church stuff. But I think I love Rhett Scholl. I don't really know him, but I really, he has what he has done with a guitar, and a small room in his parents' lower level of their house. I'm just like, what a rock star, right? And, we know his name. And so the point being is that what an amazing opportunity to witness to Rhett and to, instead of kick him out, hug him in. Oops. And let's just talk about, imagine all the tithes. I mean, like, what kind of, oops. I caught myself, that was pretty good, but it's just kind of like, seriously? It's like, Rhett, go. It's like, bad move. And, in my early savedness, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, we're kind of famous for all sorts of stuff, and, I started smoking pot in my teens, maybe even my preteens, so I lived the life of a musician, I was around in the 80s and the 90s, and survived. And I'm happy to say I survived, and happily clean and sober. I drink a little alcohol. I live a nice glass of wine and from time to time a little cognac. But at the same time, this whole point about you got to let people know what the boundaries are, and you also need to let them know why. Not like, it's like watching and waiting people is a phrase that I have that I don't really talk about much, but it's an internal dialogue where, if I'm not careful, sometimes I do that with people. I'll kind of like, and it's not a nice side of myself. Most of my internal dialogue is pretty nice. I'm a pretty nice guy on the inside, and hopefully that comes out on the outside. But the idea is I generally see the good in people, and I do everything I can within reason to help bring that out, right? Watching and waiting people is you're kind of like, I'm waiting to see you fail. I'm waiting to see when you're going to try and pull this thing on me. And there are some people that you definitely need to watch, but watching and waiting is kind of like, it lacks all grace. It's totally unchristian. It's not what Jesus would do, right? So the idea is there are people that watch and wait us as well. They're just kind of like, all right, oh, you're a Christian. Oh, they had a drink. So the point being is that, in my early years of being saved, I stumbled here and there. But people had grace with me. They didn't throw me off the team. They saw the long game and they were like, you know what? We're invested in you. Let's brush off your knees and let's go arm in arm. That's where I learned it. That people cared for me more than they cared for the rules. There are rules. The rules are good. They're important. But I'd love to have a conversation with the worship pastor that tossed Rhett Shull off the worship team. That's a conversation worth having. I will take that up with Rhett, who I don't really know well, but the next time I see him, if I have the opportunity, I'd love to have that conversation with him. Oh, I'm so tempted to do that as a historian worship musician, but I don't think we could do that. Moving on. That's a great question. Okay. Oh, no. Just kidding. David, that's there has been a moratorium or so issued around here. So this house is for a problem. My wife said no more gear this year because of bills and other stuff. Well, what about that? What's that about? Just kidding. Laugh out loud. But there is a kind of like, all right, how much gear is enough? And I know that she's on this thing here, so I better be careful what I say. But there is a certain amount where you want to make sure that here's the thing: is like I am pretty self-aware, and I'm saying this not to just talk about me. I'm saying this because here's the thing: is I want to hopefully inspire other people to be aware of their internal dialogue, because your internal dialogue ultimately it will come out. People are just going to kind of know they're smiling on the outside, but sooner or later that grouchy, judgy, throw Rhett off the team. Blah, 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 blah. We don't need him. He's not going to get saved. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you throw him off the team, he might not, right? I'm not speaking that over him. I actually would love the opportunity to share, what God has done. And, with somebody like Rhett, who has seen so much favor. Different conversation. But the point being is being aware of your internal dialogue, which not everybody is, right? Not everybody wants to pay attention to their internal dialogue. Some of us are like, I try not to listen to that guy at all or gal, because all they do is tell me I'm never going to make it. So there are certain things that we don't want to listen to, but there are certain things that we just need to take to God. It's like, can you help me deal with self-doubt? Because I'm really tired of this conversation that just seems to keep happening. And there are certain situations where I just have to tell myself, I'm not going to listen to that voice. And generally, I don't really suffer from self-doubt, but there are certain situations that I get into sometimes that are higher profile moments where I'm just kind of like, there's a little voice that comes on, is like, is tonight the night? Is tonight the night you're going to bomb? Huh? Is it? And I'm just like, who invited you? I'm just like, volume control. And it's like, accusing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I can't hear you. You're on mute. It's like a switch or a knob. I'm just like, I'm just not listening. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear what you're saying. But I know what you're saying, but I'm just like, nah. But, the thing is that internal dialogue is really destructive for a lot of people. And the more importantly, the judging of others, it ultimately manifests itself. And sometimes it comes out and we hurt other people in the process. The point being is managing your internal dialogue and leading yourself is as important in the journey as actually leading others, if not more so, right? So the point being is I am aware of the fact that I pretty much do what I want to do when I want to do that, which is, you know, the thing is that when my wife and I met, I was a mad creative, and guess what? I'm still a mad creative, and she knows that that is how I express the unstoppable amount of energy that comes out of me. And so it's being involved in this creative process. But I also realize that, it is a little bit of a one-way street, or actually, if I'm really honest, it's a lot of a one-way street. Not always, but, to do what I do and to step into the calling that I think is on my life and of the things that I have yet that I believe that God has placed in my heart to achieve, they are mammoth in size and they require a certain amount of perseverance. But at the same time, I'm aware that it comes as a cost. It's like, how much am I persevering on the things that my wife wants? So your point about like, hey, whether it's bills or whether it's like, hey, do I spend as much money on my wife as I do on, I don't know, cameras or guitar gear? I am very conscious of being aware of that because it is immature to not have those more mature dialogue conversations. So your point, as much as it's kind of joking, it's not just kidding, because honestly, these are the things that as we get older, we kind of like, well, okay, we behave like teenage musicians in some ways, but in other ways, we have to do it in respect to adult lives, right? Ooh, speaking of Proverbs, ho, 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 Alan pulling it down. The stupid stuff people post on social media. Here's the thing. I understand, whatever it is that you feel and you want to express yourself is great. I get it. But the reality is our bosses may or may not share our faith. They may or may not share our political views. And they may or may not have the ability to give us a raise and give us the next position that we're interviewing for. But I can tell you that if you have diametrically opposed, caustic social posts about things that are the opposite of what they believe in, it's not necessarily going to help advance you in your cause. And we live in a time where, people, and it's kind of like, I'll use my life as an example. I have the privilege of most of the time, I get a chance to do pretty much what I want to do when I want to do it. I work really hard, and out of that hard work, it kind of earns me some of that privilege, if you will. But that's different than the majority of people who have, like, I really need to honor the relationship that God has presented me with this boss. If my politics and my forwardness about my religion prevents me from serving in that role in a godly way, because we're supposed to, work as if we're serving unto God, then we have a little bit of a challenge, right? And I'm not saying not to profess our faith and not to profess, what we believe in. I'm not saying that. But we want to be as cunning as snakes and as gentle as doves, right? We really, and if we want to ultimately influence people, it doesn't come by beating them over the head. All it does is push them away. It's in relationship that we ultimately get a chance to kind of go, oh, that's who they are. And sometimes, people are just, I got a buddy and I just watch the stuff he posts online. I'm like, and it's kind of the opposite thing. I'm just like, if any of your bosses are conservative, you'll never get a raise. And it's just kind of like, and everybody sees everybody. So that is a very, very Proverbs kind of a thing. Just be wise. If you don't, here's another way of saying it. If you don't want your boss reading it, you probably shouldn't be posting it. Breaking my heart. Chris Rocha. No, it's not Chris, but obviously, if you can see my face light up, I adore Chris, and he's already writing for the magazine. Chris is a rock star, and that guy's got a career ahead of him. Yeah, no, yes, but no, but yes. All right. Oh, wow. Okay. I got to reach out to him. Let's see what he has to say about it. Uh, I have the same problem. Somehow it's still finds its way in. uh, there we go. I like your photo there, by the way, David. That's a good question. I presume it would be kind of that next thing. Oh, there we go. Oh, look at this. Pod one. 21-day fast. There you go. Sorry, underestimated you again. My apologies. Gosh, the Bible's good. Hey, Romeo, what's going on, my man? I always smile when I see your photo. So, right on. So, hang on a second. You're going to go there. Our rehearsals have zero spiritual element aside from closing prayer. What can we do as a team to be more in the Word? That is a great question. Okay. Not knowing anything, and by the way, okay, this is a classic situation, kind of, with Jem. Like, have you been fasting? Asking questions. Melissa, my wife, taught me all this. Is like, ask questions, because the problem is that, and me in particular, I invent. Actually, I don't really even have like I used to. I used to have conversations with people for hours on a time that I wasn't really actually having conversations with them at all. You've probably never done that. But the point being is, I was like, eventually Melissa's like, don't you get tired of it? I'm like, no. I did. So the point being is that asking questions is how we, instead of having this conversation in our head, and well, they're this, and they must be thinking that, and blah, 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 and accusing them, and suppose like, let me understand this thing, right? And or I'm trying to work something out, and I'm having a little bit of a challenge with it, and I realize this is maybe about me, but I want to bring this to you, and I want to do it in a way, with the sweet spirit. I wish in rehearsal we could somehow maybe go deeper in, and I don't know what it is, and whether it's kind of like a moment of free worship, whether it's we besides initial prayer, we have a Bible verse that we kind of ruminate on, or there's some sort of thing that brings us together, rather than like, all right, we're going to open in prayer, and like, now we're going to do rehearsal, and now we're going to go home, bye. And the neat thing about asking why is you'll get a reveal, and sometimes people are like, I mean, I was at a church in Canada, and without vision, the people shall perish. And we were talking about vision and casting vision, because I come from kind of this charismatic thing. Vision, cast the vision. And quite often, there's more vision than actual action. But I'm not saying that in judgment. Sometimes if you don't have the balance of like having a plan behind the vision, sometimes the vision never actually comes to fruition. So there's balance, right? But the point being, I said, vision and casting vision. He said to me, and he's this absolutely lovely guy, and he was so humble about it, because I could tell he was all in. He was like, I'm supposed to share that with the congregation, and I could tell that no one had ever said it to him, and he really thought, I could feel the weight with which he carried the like, I have the vision for this thing, and I've just got to kind of figure out how I'm going to move this thing forward. And when I said it, it was like the look on his face. It was like you could see all the things like, oh, that would make it so much easier. And and being able to reveal that. So the point being is the asking of questions and the revealing gives us the opportunity to understand the why, right? So asking why, it's just like, and also just saying, hey, this is a need that I really have. So this again. There's this fine line, there's the part where the making it about them is never really a good idea, but you can ask why the thing that you're having a challenge around, which is, I would love to be able to go spiritually deeper in rehearsal. Can you unpack maybe why, kind of all we seem to be doing, and maybe I'm missing something, right? So the more that in a reasonable way, it's like it feels like we could go deeper, and I wish we could. What are your thoughts? Can you tell me why? And it allows them to kind of go, wow, I just thought people really wanted to, they were busy and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes what people are thinking will blow your mind. They're like, oh, I didn't think people really wanted to labor the time and blah, blah, blah. And, I really wanted to be responsible with people. They're actually being this amazing steward. And actually, they're completely missing the leadership opportunity. So this, again, is where those dialogue moments come, right? That's the having coffee. It's virtual coffee, whatever it is, where you're actually in relationship. And that's ultimately the word, right? When you're in relationship with people, you're not wondering what the heck they're thinking. You actually know what they're thinking. You actually understand their rhythm. That's, again, why we got around and did this, tell a story that nobody else here knows, besides maybe your spouse, and maybe even not them. And all of a sudden, we walked out of that room, and we just all kind of went, because when you could talk a story about, and the things that we talked about before, everybody kind of went, I can be me now. The masks come off. That's a powerful moment. I had no idea, and I totally ripped that thing off, but I had no idea how powerful that was going to be. And it was transformational, and if anything, it was as transformational for me as well, because I watched. Here's the difference between a shallow, perfunctory worship team, and here's actually how you pull the masks off and help people feel safe, because we're all going to get vulnerable together. I was like, oh, it was to say it was 10 times more effective than I thought it would be 1/10 of how effective it was. I was just like, I was out of my mind. So it's the other thing is, and this time I'm not going to make the presumption that I did with Jem. Be praying about it. Open up. Continue to be praying about it. Is what I meant to say. Open up your discernment even more, and just kind of go, all right, Holy Spirit, what are you telling me? Such that when you walk into that conversation, if you so choose, prayed up and fasted up, or whatever it is that you're going to do in preparation, you're also. Here's the thing: is that in leadership and in servanthood and in serving down and leading up, there's all this stuff, right? And sometimes there's so much noise going on up here that if you can just go, all right, let me silence that. And it's hard to do. Honestly, it's hard to do for me. But I also am fortunate enough that there is enough volume on the spirit level that I can hear what's going on. And this is kind of one of the things is that I haven't done this much lately, but my wife and I used to travel a lot and work with worship teams in Canada, of all places, which is, I love Canada, I love Canadians, but it's so random. But I can usually walk into the room and kind of, my spiritual discernment's pretty high, so long as I don't let this part get in the way. And the interesting thing is that I'm saying this because you would meet somebody at the airport, you would ride in the car with them, they would tell you all their problems, and then you would walk into the room, and the Holy Spirit was very clear with me, was like, now you need to read the room. Because there are leader problems that are sometimes as much associated with the leader as they are with the team. And you need to be able to take that information and not use their perspective and their lenses to look at the situation. You have to have, as somebody coming in from the outside, the ability to empathize and hear and understand what they're telling you. But if you let their vision cloud yours, you lose the ability to actually hear what's really going on in that room. And, the other thing is sometimes, we have favorites, and classic example, one of those churches, and I use the example of the son of the senior pastor, but it was the daughter of the senior pastor. She was a nightmare. She was a team wrecker. Well, that was a little harsher, but basically, she was a brat. And the people on the team thought she was a brat, and she thought she was a little more. She thought she was a little better than she actually was at the time. And I've been that, so I actually understand that feeling. And I understand that attitude. But that kid needed to have their chops busted a little bit more. And I don't mean broken, but I mean like she needed to feel what it was like to work like everybody else on that team did. That builds resentment. And it really undermines the team process and just makes people just kind of go, I am not valued. Le Pupu. People are the biggest resource, not tithes, not time, not budgets, not pedals. People above all things. And that investment in those relationships is ultimately where the real fruit comes. That's the whole point. Hello, the 12, right? If we're not doing that work, we're just up there strumming guitars. It's like, what's that about? We can go out and do that and do that in a bar. It's just like, this is a whole different thing, right? Good stuff. Thank you for that. Keep me posted. 23. For me, it was 24. That was the magic year. If I could go back, 24 was like, I think that was the first year. I think I was 24 when I went to the Chicago NAMM show. It was the Chicago NAMM show just before surfing came out. I left that NAMM show with a cassette. It's around here somewhere with the roughs of Surfing with the Alien. Joe and Steve jammed. I had a little club called the Limelight. I kind of, Joe and I flew out there together. I roomed with a guy named Cliff Coltrari, who was at that point the general manager of Relativity Records, which was the label that both Joe and Steve put out, their instrumental records on then. And the bed that I ended up sleeping in the Chicago Hilton and Towers, which is a lovely hotel, was Holdsworth was supposed to be there, but he didn't make it. So I got a chance to bunk with Cliff in Holdsworth's bed. Pretty cool. And it was the year that the gem was announced, and Steve supposedly got his $250,000 endorsement, and I was there demoing for Schoen guitarists, hanging out with Neil Schon, and I was 24. Wow. And Schoen Guitars was sharing a booth with Boogie, right? So I mean, it's just like, I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And there's a photo, and I don't know where it is. I think an ex-girlfriend must have it. But there was like a photo booth at the airport, coming back, and I stopped and did this photo, and it's like I can still see it in my head. What I wouldn't give to get that photo, because it's just like, sometimes a photo captures a moment in time, and that was a very special moment. So for me, 23 is good. 24 was, it was just special. All right. Enjoy. That is some wise counsel there as well. That's so funny. That's so funny. I love it. Look at this. Love you guys. This is awesome. So the funny thing, Brad, the conversation that we have around here is not about the no interest payments. It's a matter of like, what happens when those payments stack up? So, so that is the no interest part is only part of the conversation. There we go. Honest conversation with church leaders is imperative. Absolutely. What are your expectations for me in this position? That's the thing is like, and this is the other part of that. Managing people's expectations. This is why the rules and, I use the word rules, worship team guidelines. Those are so valuable. So you let people know what the expectations are so you can manage the expectations fairly. I know from time to time be things that you hadn't seen coming, but generally, if you can, as quote unquote, the leader, have a couple of people that are in leadership with you on the team, and you get their buy-in on the things that should be in there. It's a great way to lead. Good grief, Doug. Those questions keep me up every night. And like, I'm surprised by that. Yes, man, they just texted him and told him he was terminated from staff. I take it you're talking about Rhett. Yeah, the funny thing is I teach a guy that used to be involved in church, and he just had a bad experience and wants nothing to do with church. Sahara, with pleasure. I hope that helps out. Let's just focus on Jesus, not on the people. Virtual hug. So it's this is the other thing is that it's a fine line because I'm going to speak to it because there is actually a lot of truth in that, and you're not saying that to call me out. I think the interesting thing about each of our unique spiritual gifts is sometimes we just outwork them in different ways. I'm kind of, if you could make the analogy of the body, I like to hang out at the hands and the feet, right? There's God's heart and all of that. It's just kind of where my faith manifests itself. And honestly, it's kind of like the person you see at the gym that they've got these giant biceps and they got these little tiny legs. They're elements in my walk and my personal relationship that are grossly underdeveloped because it's just kind of the way I am naturally. So you're actually speaking to me in great accuracy there. And it's just, sometimes we just can't help ourselves. So, but I appreciate your honesty in that. And that point is well and personally in the best of ways taken. So thank you for that. Right back at you. Here's a question. If worship ministry has been stagnant and is struggling to move forward, how do you address it and what are some practical things to focus on for improvement? That's easy. One is you listen to the live stream and you go, what is great, if anything? What is good, if anything, and what's not? And then you also have a list of things that if you were to go work with a worship team, not at your church, you would have on that list and kind of go, okay, what does that list look like? Well, I'd be listening for in-tune vocals. I would be listening for vocal blend, including harmonies and dynamics, and vocalists that actually sing in time because they're listening to the click. I'm listening for drummers that don't hit the snare drum too loud. I'm looking for front of house engineers that don't love drums more than they love clarity in the lead vocal, i.e. the snare drum. I'm looking for how do things actually translate into the online mix if they're mixing vocals and guitars and bass and drums and having that come out live online. I'm looking to understand how they onboard new musicians, how they onboard new material, how they approach rehearsals, how they practice their tops and tails, how their transitions are. That'll get us 10 things to actually focus on real fast. And in so doing, that's 6 months with your average worship team of just doing that stuff. That is, and then there's the practical side of it. You pull the vocalists out. Basically, I think we had a team night that I instituted once a month. This obviously, you can see me sitting forward in my chair. I'm like, ooh. And the interesting thing is that, I will, again, in self-analyzing, I have different body postures and reactions to many different things, and they're all kind of their own unique reactions. There are many different sides of our personalities, and we want to be aware. Much of the time, they're moving in the same direction at the same time, and sometimes they're not. So it's good to, again, just kind of go, note to self. But the idea is team night once a month. So that basically meant I, in advance, knew the songs that we were going to be going over. I also worked out, and I had tested the vocalists, knew their vocal range. I knew their low and their high note. So I knew what register to put with particular songs for them, what keys, because I knew their vocal register. And so in advance, I already knew, like a month or two in advance, the songs were out, who was singing what keys they were going to be in, and in turn that I would also have basically a vocal sectional. And so the vocal sectionals would be going through the songs that we would be going over, and somebody would be playing piano, and then they would be going through the parts, working as a vocal section without a PA, without in-ears, without anything other than gathering around a piano or a keyboard, actually working on their vocal harmonization, and actually learning to blend. Fancy that. And especially when I had a bunch of vocalists that should never have been on the team in the first place, I was like, I've got to put some structure in here to address this. And it also gave them an approach and an on-ramp to get some of the attention that they needed to get on a regular basis. So but at the same time, if I were to just kind of come in and get hired to do, to be in that role again, that would be one of the first things I would do. Other thing is a team night, ideally once a month, getting together at somebody's house, ideally mine, because it means that we can host people. There's nothing like inviting people into your home. It is a special thing to be invited into your leader's home. It's different than, oh, we're going to go meet over at so and so's house. The other thing is to have some Saturday rehearsals, and the other thing is to also try and have some sort of, and to tell you the truth, it's very funny that I can't remember what it was, but have some sort of spiritual dimension that you made sure that the team was also growing spiritually. And I don't remember, there was something that I did that I was like, oh, this is cool, and I actually can't remember what it was. But it was something that, it was like Romeo was talking about. There's got to be some sort of component where people are going like, there is some spiritual thing. There is also, and I'm sorry I can't remember. That's not good. There was also a thing that I did with the team members, because ultimately, people beat up on themselves usually worse than others do for them. But one of the things with that other worship leader that I served under, that we did when she was the leader of that team, was we had actually set up quote unquote performance reviews. So once a quarter, we would kind of have people come in, and the first thing that we would do is kind of go, how do you think you're doing? And 99.9% of the time, by the time they were actually done unpacking that, you never really had to say anything to anybody. People know what's up. They know if they're under-rehearsed, if they know if they're under-warmed up, if they're vocalists. They know if they're not singing with the click on. And they have a tendency in those moments to actually go, well, this is what I need to work on. And I got to, all right, that's great. Really appreciate you being honest. Honestly, that those are the same things that are on our that we've talked about. And again, the whole point is we want to see you prosper. We want to see you grow in this opportunity. It's not about, just getting up there and doing it on Sunday. And they would know that. They would leave feeling good. They also had the opportunity, though, to just kind of go, this is where I'm not delivering. And that is a really great place to get people to where they can actually go, this is where I'm falling short. It leads people to a place of, as long as you're not rubbing their face in it, to let the mask down and kind of be humble and just kind of like, yeah, this is where I'm falling short. So what we behind that, and I would say, all right, one thing you did that was either new or better than you've done before, and one thing that you could do better, because that allowed us to own our shortcomings. So you don't have to say to somebody once a quarter, it's just like, every week you're out of tune or unwarmed up or don't know the chords or don't know the songs or, whatever the heck it is. On a Sunday, it's just like, because the thing is, a lot of people are way harsher on themselves than they are kind of positive themselves. So it's always good for them to be able to go, all right, why don't you, and I think we led with one thing that you felt you could have been done better, and one thing that you thought, hey, you know what, this was an improvement. Because it left them with a positive feeling, as opposed to like, all right, one thing you did well, and then now let us know how you really suck, right? Because sometimes the last thought is the one that they leave down, as opposed to like, what was one thing that you felt that you did really well, and it represents some sort of growth? It was a new thing, maybe it was some sort of breakthrough or something, and what it allowed people to do was celebrate their personal victories, together. And that is a very powerful thing to be able to do. And it also allowed us to keep those masks down by kind of going, yeah, I could have put in a little bit more time this week. But also in that environment, people kind of got to go, look, I had school and it just was killing me. And people kind of go, hey, can we pray for you this week? And they're like, yeah, I could use it, That was it. I don't remember exactly where it was, but tell everybody on the team one thing that we could be praying for you about this week. And that's huge. Even if, Romeo, at your rehearsal, like that little moment, when your team is praying for each other, that covering, that's the good stuff. All right. So hopefully, Jem, that answered your practical side of that. And I love that bit. Okay. Oh, I got fired. I saw the title of that video. And then, okay. Wow. All right. Boy. Don't get me started on yeah, no, it's just like, yeah, it's just like, just put the mouse down. Uh, oh boy. Yep. I was like, who'd have thunk it? So wait a second, I'm posting it on social media, and then people read it. Oh, just like, oh my word. Oh, that's so funny. That list is everything that our whole team is looking forward to improving. Oh, that's great. Awesome. You know how much I love helping, and you know how much I love any opportunity to come alongside you, Jim. You know that because you're a gem. I have a big spot in my heart for you. You know that. But the other thing is practicing looping tops and tails. The last four measures or last two measures of the one song and the first four measures of the next one, both midweek rehearsal and Sunday morning, lifesaver. Whether it's capoing, whether it's the tempos, whether it's Bob, or Dr. Bob is what we used to call the little metronome, whether it's the computer, Ableton, all of that stuff, that is where the ball gets dropped. And when you're tight on your transitions, like honestly, there's no place besides out of tune vocals and in tune vocals, conversely, that you really kind of get the sense that the worship team has their act together. When the transitions are like, the point being is that kind of the other thing. Jam, you've probably heard me talk about this before, but dynamics mapping, scale of 1 to 10. Writing, all right, this is where verse 1 is at a 4. This is where verse 2 is at a 6. So literally everybody is on the same page about where the band is going to go in terms of the dynamic range of that stuff. That's how, quote unquote, we play this arrangement. Because guess what? If you pull up Jesus Culture's tracks and you got your drummer and you on guitar and your bass player, it's going to sound different because guess what? You guys don't actually have Kim Walker-Smith there leading worship. So it's going to sound and feel different. So you got to figure out how you're going to own that material. And those dynamic markers are just going, all right, this is where we do it. It's just a roadmap. It's kind of like GPS. All right, here we go. It's a no-brainer. That's so funny. There's one on Reverb for $15,000. Oh, buffering? Oh, no. No, he's repeating. Hold on a second. What the heck, ski? Hang on. Oh, my word. All right. No, there we go. All right. Something's happening over there. All right. He's back. Oh, my word. Started streaming 110 minutes ago. All right. I'm back. There we go. Okay. Who knows what's going on? We've been having some issues with our internet. What a bummer. All right, sorry about that. I hope everything's working. All right, there we go. All right, he's repeating. Someone broke Doug. Hurry, call the police in America. Oh no, this was a good long one. Thanks, Doug, for your time. With pleasure, with great pleasure. He's back. Who knows what was happening there. All right, let me check in real quick because unfortunately the way this works is for whatever reason. Bruce Adolph. All right, sorry. My apologies to everybody over on That's so funny. My apologies to everybody over here on Facebook that I temporarily ignored. I'm back. Uh, Mazda's got to run. All right. Hang on a second. All right. Hang on a second. Difference between nice and kind. My wife, she's amazing. The player makes a sound. Okay, Jim, a few years ago, always a pleasure, my friend. I hope you're still here. And if not, a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to turn a problem into a great thing. Live video interrupted. What is going on? All right, I'm seeing it myself. That's weird. Hang on, is that happening on both Facebook and YouTube? Yeah, it is. All right. Any case, so I was no longer the lead guitar player, but I had to find my place now. There were two electric guitar players. Forced me to play different. Love that. Using different chord voices. I grew exponentially as a guitar player. I ended up being blessed by the entire situation. Now that's, and Jim, and whether you're here or not, that is again, sometimes those stories are like, hey, look, hopefully it's handled in such a way as like, oh yeah, I'm I'm the guy or the gal that is the guitar player. It's like, actually, we're now adding a second guitar player, and you're going to do half the solos now, quote unquote solos, and you're like, that's a little weird, or just kind of like, okay. I mean, if it's done well, then it's totally chill. If it's not done well, then you're kind of like, what just happened? I guess I wasn't doing a good enough job. But the other thing about it is sometimes you're in a position where you're like, oh, you know what? I get a chance to grow in this. And that is awesome. I love that. If I/we are not facing spiritual adversity, am I/we that much of a threat? Thank you very much. Love Cold Chisel. Love it. Yes, 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 yes. Hello to Manila. I'm not going to try and destroy your name tonight, but thank you so much for joining us. Steve McFarland, always a pleasure. Oh, there we go. And I'm looking at Steve's answer about the talking about using Helix Native Live. Thank you for jumping in on that. Much appreciated. Bruce Adolph, my dear friend. Jem, I think you would serve your church well. I know your character. It is wise to find out what a job's roles and responsibilities would be and make sure there's a clear understanding between both parties. Listen to that. That's why it's my BOSS. Also, good understanding of how many hours spent on the job during the week and service times. Sometimes the expectations can be unrealistic from churches. Very well put. Boy, you should you write for a worship magazine or something. I worked part-time for a church before, 30 hours a week, and had my other side jobs to fill in the difference of income I needed to provide for my family. I kept a detailed record of those hours for their church, and it also kept me on track for my other work. That is wise counsel. I know you have goals for your musician producer career, and you want to make sure that you make room for everything you want to do to flourish. Whoo, that river's running deep. Just some thoughts from your long distance buddy. Well put, Bruce. Wow. I hope this is making it through. I'm watching this kind of strange thing that's happened to the stream. It looks great locally, but when I'm looking at it online, it looks terrible. Just a suggestion for Romeo. Thank you, Deanne. Maybe join the weekly prayer meeting once a month. Okay, good. Will help with unity for the team. There we go. My favorite word, unity. Team Wrecker had a few of those over the years. Laugh out loud. Yeah, unfortunately. It happens, but sometimes, that's just the way it is. There we go. Jem, are tracks something that needs to be implemented? No, or not really. Oh, okay. Hold on. All right, good. All right. There we go. Sahara, thank you. And I am really glad to hear that. And with pleasure. Awesome. Okay, Jem, are tracks something that needs to be implemented or not really? Maybe for youth worship. So, okay, that is a great question. First of all, I have the privilege of working with the Multitracks folks in numerous different areas. And I have never been more impressed. I've been as impressed because the folks at OnSong also come to mind, and the folks at CCLI. But I have never been as impressed because, you could look at multi-tracks and kind of go, oh, okay, they get the rights and then you pay money. It's so not about the money for those guys. They are so sold out for the resourcing side of what they're able to do to help teams sound better, hear the actual stems, learn from the actual stems. Because when you actually hear what the actual guitar part sounds like and the actual bass part sounds like, then you're able to actually kind of go, you pull that stuff apart and you go, boom. And they are so excited about the resourcing, and they're going to continue to do that. And there's a guy that I'm getting to know named Luke Anderson, plays drums at Elevation Worship. And he's he's creating some sounds for them. And they are just assembling a team, like Nigel, for one, of content creators that are just doing so much to help the church. And their heart is to grow the church. So the track side of things, what you will learn as a member of a team that goes from not using tracks to using tracks is helping the team grow to that next place where kind of the tracks are becoming more and more of the quote-unquote norm, at least in the States here. They can be overused. There was a worship team that I never actually got a chance to even audition for. It was the strangest thing. It was a church that we hung out at for a minute, and then I had the strangest encounter with a worship pastor. And I, one day just kind of was like, I want to audition. I said, this is kind of who I am. This is what I do. It's like, well, you need to do this. Oh, I'm buffering again. That is really annoying. I guess it's God's way of saying, it's like, you've been on for 2 hours. Why don't you, shut up? All right. In any case, the point being is there was a vocalist on that team, and it was I think I finally realized why they'd be perfectly in tune, and it was so out of tune that it was like I don't know what they were listening to. I think they used pitch correction so much on this person's voice that he would eventually he was so out of tune that even the pitch correction couldn't fix it. That is to say that they relied on technology more than they actually relied on the actual work of a team that actually rehearses properly. And I, of course, will not be mentioning the name of that church. But, so the technology can help, but it shouldn't be the main attraction, right? All right, I'm temporarily unbuffering, but that is really annoying because I'm watching myself manipulate the mouse, and I haven't had my hand on the mouse for a minute, and I'm buffering again. Oh, that is really annoying. Am I looping? I don't even want to turn the audio up because then it'll create a real loop. In any case, Alan, thank you. This is interesting. So now the other possibility is that there's just some sort of issue happening. Brad, thank you. Much appreciated. And Alan ditto. Okay. Very kind. Thank you very much. Maybe for youth worship. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on that quote-unquote note at 8:11, 8:12, I've got a few things that I need to do this evening before I wrap things up. So I just want to thank you for hanging out. This was so much fun. This is, again, the moral of the story. And I don't know if anybody's hearing this, but the point being is if they are, problems can be fun. How about that? Problems can be fun because when we look at a problem as an opportunity to grow, when we look at a problem as an opportunity to learn, and learning and growing are not necessarily the same things. Growing, it just means that I learn to get over myself. Learning means we learn how to play with the click as a team by playing with tracks, and everybody's kind of going, oh, those are the actual parts? Oh. The thing is that then when we also learn to overcome adversity through unity, we're learning spiritual unity. And sometimes that doesn't come without a problem that precedes it. In any case, I want to thank you. This has been a source of multitudes of levels of joy for me. So thank you for that. I leave with my cup not only full but overflowing. So, what a privilege. So, Lord, we just give thanks for the privilege of serving. Of all the things that we get a chance to do, you came to serve, you came to love, you came to be the example of the hands and feet that we get to be. So, Lord, I just pray that we have the gentleness and the grace and the courage and the forgiveness that you had in the face of adversity, in the face of disappointment, in the face of backstabbing, in the face of